Have you ever wondered why certain people seem to attract toxic relationships over and over again? Why do some individuals walk through life almost like magnets for emotional manipulators, narcissists, and energy drainers, while others somehow become invisible to the same predators? It's not luck. It's not fate. It's not because they're stronger or colder or better at saying no. It's something much deeper. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, discovered a truth that most people never realize. He found that toxic people are not just opportunists, they're emotional predators. And like all predators, they have an instinct. They can sense something. They can smell what's hidden beneath the surface. What exactly are they sensing? Your unresolved wounds, your invisible vulnerabilities, the parts of you that are still open, still raw, still bleeding, even if you pretend otherwise. Toxic people don't need you to tell them where you're weak. They already know. Not consciously, it's instinctual. They can pick up on the subtle signals, the energy you emit when you carry unhealed emotional wounds. That's why you find yourself trapped in the same dynamics, again and again. You leave one toxic relationship, and soon another appears. You change jobs to escape a manipulative boss, only to find another one waiting for you. It's like life is playing a cruel joke. But it's not life, it's the unconscious. And until you face this truth, the pattern will repeat. Jung called it projection. Everything you refuse to face inside yourself, everything you deny, everything you hide, it doesn't disappear. It projects outward. You carry it into the world like a signal. And people, especially toxic people, respond to that signal. They see the cracks you pretend aren't there. They sense the shame, the fear, the desperate need to be liked, the terror of rejection, and they move in. This is not about blaming yourself. It's not about saying you deserve to be treated badly. It's about understanding the game you're unknowingly playing. Because if you don't recognize your shadow, you will continue to attract people who mirror it back to you. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." So what's the unconscious part here? It's the belief that you need others' approval to survive, the need to be seen as kind, generous, good, the fear of being alone, the terror of being judged. And toxic people can sense that. They sniff it out like wolves smell fear. They poke at your insecurities, test your boundaries, and push your buttons, not because they're evil masterminds, but because your shadow invites them to. Every time you react emotionally to manipulation, every time you defend yourself, over-explain, try to prove your worth, you're feeding the game. You're telling the world, I have something to protect, I have something to hide. That's what makes you visible to emotional predators. And here's the paradox. The more you try to be good, the more you try to be kind, the more you try to avoid conflict, the more you attract the very people who feed off that. Because the world doesn't respond to your surface, it responds to your energy. And when your energy says, I need you to like me, or I'm afraid of confrontation, you become a target. So what's the solution? It's not to become cold. It's not to build walls. It's not to cut everyone out of your life. It's to integrate the shadow. Jung believed that the secret to becoming psychologically untouchable is not in defending yourself from toxic people. It's in making peace with your own darkness. Because when you do that, toxic people lose interest. They can't find an opening. It's like trying to pick a lock that no longer exists. You become solid, whole, unshakable. They can't manipulate someone who has nothing to hide. They can't control someone who isn't afraid of their own flaws. They can't feed off someone who has stopped leaking emotional energy into the world. So the question is, are you ready to stop blaming toxic people for everything? Are you ready to look inward, to face the parts of yourself that attract them in the first place? Because the real work doesn't start outside, it starts within. Let's go deeper into this idea, because this is where most people stop. They hear shadow work and think it's about journaling, meditating, maybe reading a few quotes from Jung. But the real work is much harder. It's about facing the uncomfortable truth that the part of you attracting toxic people isn't just weak. It's unintegrated. It's the part of you that still craves approval, the part that's terrified of being disliked, the part that wants to be seen as good, polite, selfless, even if it means sacrificing your boundaries. And here's what no one tells you. Toxic people love that part of you. They feed on it. Because when you're desperate to be liked, you'll tolerate almost anything. You'll overlook the red flags. You'll justify bad behavior. You'll stay silent when you should speak up. And the more you do that, the more they take. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But that also means everything that drains you, manipulates you, or traps you in drama is showing you a mirror. It's pointing to a part of yourself you haven't yet claimed. Maybe you've repressed your own capacity for anger. Maybe you've denied your desire for power, for control, for setting limits. Maybe you've labeled those things as bad because someone taught you to, so you buried them. And now you attract people who embody those traits for you. They play out the role you refuse to take on. They control, dominate, manipulate, and you endure it. Because deep down, a part of you believes that setting boundaries is selfish, that saying no is cruel, that walking away makes you the bad person. But here's the truth. If you don't own your own darkness, someone else will use it against you. That's what the shadow is. It's the parts of you that you won't look at, won't claim, won't integrate. And when you leave them in the dark, they don't disappear. They control you from the background. They run your life without your permission. Jung warned us about this. He said that when you repress the shadow, it governs you unconsciously. It chooses your relationships. It determines who you're drawn to. It dictates who is drawn to you. And until you bring it into the light, you'll keep repeating the same patterns. So how do you change that? It starts with brutal honesty. You have to admit the parts of yourself you've been denying, the anger you've suppressed, the need for control you've disowned, the part of you that doesn't want to be nice all the time. That part is real. It's human. And the more you ignore it, the more you attract people who live it out for you. They become your shadow in action. That's why when you meet a narcissist or a manipulator, you feel this intense reaction. Sometimes it's hatred, sometimes it's fascination, sometimes both. But what you're really reacting to is the part of yourself you've buried. That's the projection. And until you claim it, you'll stay trapped in the game. So what's the solution? You integrate. You stop pretending to be pure light. You accept that you have a shadow, that you have selfishness in you, that you have aggression, that you have pride, and that's okay. Integration doesn't mean becoming toxic. It means knowing your darkness so it no longer controls you. It means choosing how to act instead of reacting from unconscious wounds. When you do that, you change your energy. You stop leaking signals that say, "Please validate me." You stop giving off the scent of fear, shame, or hidden neediness. And toxic people, they sense the shift. They lose interest because they're not looking for a fight. They're looking for food. And when you stop feeding them, they move on. It's like becoming a smooth stone in the stream. There's nothing for them to hook into, no emotional cracks to slip through. You're not defensive, you're not aggressive, you're just solid, whole. And when you carry that energy, the world treats you differently. Not because you forced anyone to change, but because you changed. The shadow stops running your life, and you start living as your whole self, not just the parts you think are acceptable. Most people try to deal with toxic relationships by learning clever strategies. They memorize scripts. They practice saying no. They set boundaries with shaky voices, hoping this time it will work. And sometimes it does, for a while. But the problem isn't the surface behavior. It's the energy underneath. Because toxic people don't respond to words. They respond to signals. And if your energy still says, "I'm afraid of being disliked," or "I need you to approve of me," then no boundary will hold. They'll test it. They'll push. They'll poke. And eventually, you'll collapse. You'll explain, defend, overcompensate. And just like that, you're back in the game. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. He taught that the unconscious is like a transmitter. It sends out messages, even when you don't realize it. And if your shadow is filled with shame, fear, or the desperate need to be seen as good, that's what you're broadcasting. Toxic people pick up that frequency. They smell it like sharks smell blood. But when you integrate your shadow, something changes. You stop sending out signals that say, "Come manipulate me." You become energetically closed to their games. Not because you've built walls, but because you've removed the hooks they latch onto. That's why shadow work is not optional if you want to break free from this pattern. It's essential. So what does it look like? It starts with accepting that you have the same traits you hate in others. Not in the same form, not in the same intensity, but they're there. You have selfishness, you have cruelty, you have control issues. And that's okay. The difference is that you're willing to see it, willing to own it, willing to choose how to use it consciously instead of pretending it doesn't exist. Because when you don't choose, the shadow chooses for you. It leaks out in passive aggression, in people-pleasing, in burnout, in secretly resenting the very people you're trying to please. That's the trap. You become nice on the outside, but full of suppressed rage on the inside. And toxic people can sense that conflict. They know you won't hold the line because you don't really want to. You're still trying to be good, still trying to avoid being called selfish or mean. But here's the truth. Real boundaries don't come from fear. They come from clarity, from knowing who you are, what you want, and what you're no longer willing to tolerate. And when you live from that place, your energy shifts. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to convince anyone. You simply stop playing the game. And toxic people, they get bored. They can't provoke you because you're not reactive. They can't control you because you're not hooked on their approval. They walk away, not because you pushed them out, but because they lost interest. It's like trying to push buttons that no longer exist. There's no emotional reaction, no drama to feed off, just stillness. And that stillness is power. Carl Jung called this psychic integrity. It's a state where you're no longer fragmented. You've gathered back the parts of yourself you gave away, the parts you outsourced to others, the need to be validated, to be accepted, to be seen. You reclaim them. And when you do, you emit a different frequency, not one of defense or aggression, but one of calm, solid presence. Toxic people can't play with that. They walk around you like predators bypassing prey they can't catch. It's not worth the effort, because you're not in the game anymore. You're not trying to win. You're not trying to prove anything. You're just here, whole, and that's where real freedom begins. If this resonates with you, consider subscribing to Depthora and turning on the notifications so we can go deeper together. Let's go even deeper. Because breaking the cycle isn't just about seeing the pattern, it's about changing the way you interact with the world. And that starts with one of the hardest lessons Jung ever taught. What you resist persists. The more you try to fight toxic people, the more they become part of your reality. The more you focus on defending yourself, explaining yourself, or proving your worth, the more you keep the drama alive. Why? Because attention is energy, and whatever you give energy to grows. When you react emotionally to manipulation, you're not stopping it, you're feeding it. You're telling the predator, "This is working, keep going." That's how you get stuck in endless cycles of emotional exhaustion. You try to out-argue someone who doesn't care about logic. You try to set boundaries, but then you explain them so much that you erode your own position. You try to avoid conflict, but end up swallowed by it. This is the trap of engagement. Toxic people thrive on emotional reaction. They throw out bait, sarcastic comments, passive-aggressive silence, small manipulations. And when you bite, they tighten the grip. not because they're always doing it consciously. It's often instinctual. They've learned that drama feeds them, that chaos gives them power, and if you play the game, you're part of the system. So what's the alternative? Neutrality, not coldness, not cruelty, just stillness, a refusal to participate in the emotional loop. That doesn't mean you let people walk over you. It means you disengage from the need to win, from the need to be right, from the need to control how others see you. It's a quiet kind of power. When someone tries to provoke you, you see the game, but you don't play. You respond with calm, with silence when needed, with clear, simple statements, without the extra emotional baggage. And when you do that, something interesting happens. The person trying to control you loses interest. They can't find the hook, because you're no longer feeding them with your energy. This isn't about pretending to be unaffected. It's about actually shifting your internal state, moving from fear to clarity, from defense to presence. Toxic people don't know what to do with that. They're used to reactions, anger, tears, panic, over-explanation. When none of that comes, they're left confused. And eventually, they move on. They look for someone else, someone still stuck in the loop, someone who will react the way they expect. But you've changed. You're no longer offering yourself as fuel for other people's dysfunction. You're not trying to fix them. You're not trying to heal them. You're not trying to teach them a lesson. You've stepped out of the dance. And that's when you become invisible to toxic people. Not because you're hiding, but because you've stopped radiating the signals they're searching for. Carl Jung called this individuation, becoming whole, living from the center of your own being, not from the fragmented pieces trying to get approval from the outside world. It's not about becoming untouchable in a cold way. It's about becoming solid, clear, unshakable. That's why Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And who you truly are is not the person trapped in emotional games. It's not the version of you constantly managing how others perceive you. It's not the people pleaser, not the fixer, not the emotional sponge for everyone else's chaos. It's the version of you that knows, I don't need your approval to exist. I don't need to explain myself to feel valid. I don't need to engage in every conflict to prove my worth. And from that place of inner solidity, you naturally repel the people who feed on weakness. Because you're not weak, you're not reactive, you're not available for the game. And that's not just a strategy, it's a way of being, a new baseline for how you move through life. Now let's talk about what happens when you step into this new version of yourself. At first, it feels strange. If you've spent most of your life people-pleasing, over-explaining, and absorbing other people's emotions, standing in stillness feels unnatural. You might even feel guilty, because for years, your value came from being useful to others, from managing their feelings, from fixing their problems. So when you stop doing that, the voice in your head might whisper, "Am I being selfish? Am I being cold? Will people think I've changed?" And the answer is, yes, you have changed. And that's a good thing. Carl Jung believed that true transformation is not about adding more to yourself. It's about removing what's false, peeling away the masks you've worn to survive, letting go of the roles you played to stay safe. That includes the role of the emotional caretaker, the fixer, the person who tolerates too much just to keep the peace. When you stop playing those roles, you disrupt the system. People who benefited from your self-sacrifice won't like it. They'll call you selfish, cold, different. Because from their perspective, you are. You're no longer participating in their cycle. You're no longer feeding their need for control by staying soft and pliable. But here's the truth. Boundaries are not cruelty. Distance is not punishment. Silence is not aggression. Sometimes it's protection. Protection of your time, your energy, your mental clarity, and the people who respect that will stay. The ones who don't will drift away. That's part of the process. Not everyone can go with you when you evolve. Jung called this individuation because it's about becoming an individual, not a copy of what others expect you to be. It's about living from your own center, not from the shifting demands of the people around you. And yes, that's lonely at first. When you stop playing the role of the emotional caretaker, there's a void. But over time, you fill that void with something better: self-respect, calm, freedom. You start attracting different people, people who don't feed on your energy, but meet you as equals. People who respect your boundaries without testing them. People who don't need you to fix them because they're fixing themselves. That's the reward of shadow work. You clean up your side of the street. You stop leaking emotional signals that say, "Please use me." You stop broadcasting, "I'm afraid of being alone, so I'll tolerate anything." And as you do that, your relationships change. Some people will leave. New people will arrive. The space you create by letting go of toxic dynamics will make room for connections built on mutual respect, not manipulation. That's how you shift your life, not by fighting others, but by transforming yourself. Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." Looking inside is uncomfortable. It means facing the parts of you that allowed toxic people to stay. It means admitting where you abandoned yourself to avoid abandoning others. But that's where the real power is. Because once you see it, you can change it. You can stop playing the role of the wounded healer. You can stop being the emotional dumping ground for everyone else's chaos. And you can start living from a place of strength, not defense. That's what makes you invisible to toxic people. Not because you've disappeared, but because you've become solid. They can't feed on you anymore because there's nothing left for them to take. You're not broadcasting neediness. You're not radiating fear. You're simply here, grounded, whole. And from that place, life feels different. Not perfect, but clear. And clarity is worth everything. So what do you do now? You've seen the pattern. You've felt the trap. And now you understand the real secret. It's not about protecting yourself from toxic people. It's about becoming the kind of person they can't manipulate in the first place. That starts with one decision. Stop hiding from your own shadow. Stop pretending you're just the good parts of yourself. Stop denying the anger, the fear, the pride, the ambition, the messy human contradictions that live inside you. Because when you own those parts, no one can use them against you. That's why Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." You can choose to become whole, not perfect, not invincible, just whole. That means living from the center of yourself, not from the expectations of others. It means knowing where you stand, even when people try to pull you into drama. It means saying no without guilt, setting boundaries without over-explaining, walking away without apologizing. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming real. When you're real, people feel it. They sense your energy shift. Toxic people drift away because there's no hook to latch onto, no hidden fear to exploit, no suppressed need to manipulate. You've made peace with your own darkness, so theirs has nowhere to land. That's the deepest secret of shadow work. You don't conquer darkness by fighting it. You integrate it. You stop fearing the parts of yourself that society told you to hide. And when you do that, you radiate something rare, calm power, the kind of presence that doesn't need to prove anything, the kind of energy that says, without words, "I'm not available for games. I'm not interested in drama. I don't need to control you, and you can't control me." That's what makes you invisible to toxic people. Not because you've disappeared, but because you've stopped participating in their reality. You've stepped out of the cycle, and you've chosen something better: peace, clarity, freedom. This is not the easy path. It's not comfortable at first, but it's real, and real is where life happens. So the next time you feel the pull to explain yourself, to fix someone, to tolerate one more thing just to keep the peace, pause, breathe. Remember this: you're not here to play small. You're not here to manage other people's chaos. You're here to become who you are: whole, integrated, free, and that starts today.